have 2 agendas a month that nearly take up and sometimes exceed 3 hours. And I don't know how you're going to be able to cram all of that into one session and still give the public their input. So, the work session probably be a good idea, but I don't know how we break it down in just one meeting a month to do it. Because there is so much stuff to discuss.
Would you be okay with having a session with Cassandra? It's like another work session with the board and public and staff to try and hammer out some kind of system that might work for
that
us.
would be fine. That'd be fine.
Okay. Yes, Michelle.
If I may just respond to Bill's concern, I agree with that. I think we've got a lot on our plates. One suggestion that I mentioned to Dave based on his earlier comment was, and we would have to look into the legality of it, I'm sure, but I know there are some towns in Colorado where their trustees' emails are publicly available on their website, and I believe this allows them to do more communicating by email.
With each other.
Exactly. So
Oh.
regarding actual agenda items, there can be a little more back and forth communication in advance of the meeting rather than all of it having to occur during the meeting.
I don't think that that's possible. I mean, I've gone round and round with this on Bo and Corinne Bo, that those emails, I don't know if they have to be made public or if it's even considered being able to do that. I mean, when I sent stuff to you guys, it has been CC Corinne, so it goes into the public record, and it's not a discussion. It's a one-way sharing of information. It's not a back and forth, which I think is what the Sunshine Law is trying to get to. Because if we come to a decision outside of a board meeting, then that goes against the Sunshine Law. Absolutely. So we can't make any decisions. So, yeah, Dave.
Wow. I think what we just saw was an example of an activating force and a restraining force just now. And both of them have good parts on it, but we haven't been able to get deeper into what each side has said. For instance, with Michelle, what she's proposing is something that other towns legally do, and it's more transparent. But Mary is concerned about, open meetings and making sure that we're clear on the records, and there are some things where we have to communicate confidentially. So I just wanted to point out the dynamic of what we just did here.
And that's why I think if we were to have some kind of session, we could bring all these ideas to, we could talk about this stuff. We could maybe come up with a better solution for all this stuff. And so I think a work session would be really helpful, whether it's, I don't know that we could do it in an hour, not with everybody giving their opinion and including the public and including the staff. I can't see that this is going to be an hour meeting.
I mean, the training, to put something that, the training in the beginning, like what she did here, was very condensed and very valuable. I think there was really good points that she brought up. So that can set the groundwork, but then the decision-making process, that's where the rubber really meets the road on the dialogue, and that's what's hard. That's what takes time.
Right, exactly. I mean, we all put in a lot of time every single month on doing our background, reading up, making sure we have the answers we need, sitting through the meetings, when we all have committee meetings that we go to on top of all of that. So yeah, we have big time commitments, and I certainly don't want to add to that if it's not going to be valuable and bring something forward that's going to help us function well.
So for a follow-up session, would a a win-win possibly be a shorter meeting, maybe an hour and a half, with the understanding that we might not get to a decision in one session.
Okay. And then
but at least
another maybe?
Right, but it would at least get the conversation started and the foundation in place of how we're even going to have this conversation among the board, the staff, and the public for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Hour and a half meeting for the first one, and then we can see if we want to continue the whole discussion.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, shall we tentatively schedule an hour-and-a-half meeting, and then I'll check with Cassandra, and then if we need to change it to something else, we can change it to something else. So I know we have 2 working members of the board here, so I guess you guys, your schedules are going to, in a large way, determine when we can do this, your work schedules. Well, let's start. Anybody going out of town in the next month or so? Well, well, vacation, Bill. Vacation. So Corinne won't be here at the end of the month, or the end of May. So, yes, exactly. So we have, probably 5 weeks in here where we can do it. We've got a board meeting on the 13th, board meeting on the 27th. No, that's going to be at the next board meeting. So that can be part of this as well. Or, I don't know. Do we want to put it off? That would be another thing, is to consider it. Don't even bring it up right now. Let's go ahead and deal with this, and then that can be part of the bigger discussion. Okay. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, my God, our hourly rate is going way down. All right, so let's start weekday versus weekend. Okay. Is there a better day for you, Michelle and Tammy?
For me, any day but Monday would be fine.
Okay.
I work 10:30 to 2:30 Monday through Thursday, 8 to noon on Friday. So
Okay. We could do that. And then plan on running till 6:30. A Tuesday. May 4th. Yep. And then I will get in touch with her and then let you guys know if that's going to work, and then you can go back and forth. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think that's a good idea. All right. Let's move on to street closures. I wish Deborah would have come back. Oh, well. Moving on.
Okay, so I just did a very brief summary of some of the resources that I looked at and some of my thoughts. I do want to let everyone know that the police department did assist to deliver this agenda to all the open businesses on Grand. And they took two different times over 2 days to hand out the agenda, so the business owners were notified of this work session, and were also informed that it would also be an agenda item on at the next regular board meeting for continued discussion and potential decision. So I looked at and thank you, Amanda. You had some calendars and a list of events. They've been pared down a little. We had some of our people that have asked for some street closures remove a few. So we did a calendar just to show you where we're at right now with some of the street closure requests and the times. And so these aren't, they're not as heavy or constrictive as they initially were when we were first getting them. But still good to see when we're looking at my suggestions, which were basically that the administrative approval would fall under this criteria, that if it's after 6 p.m., that's when the majority of the businesses that feel that they're negatively impacted are closed. The businesses that are still open for the most part are the restaurants, and they feel that they're positively impacted by the street closures and events happening. They get more foot traffic in their restaurants. So that was why the determination for the 6 p.m. or later, if it does not exceed the 5 hours or past 11 p.m., because we do have such a, even though it's our core commercial, it's very interwoven with residential. You just could be one building removed from somebody's residence. That's why I put 11 p.m. No consecutive days or consecutive weekends, and that they are willing to adhere to all the current requirements, such as the notification to the neighbors, the insurance, the fees that are associated with street closure events, things like that. And so anything outside of that, my suggestion was then would require a board approval. So if you're wanting to close the street earlier than 6 p.m., then you come to it needs to go to the board. If it's over 5 hours, if it's more than one night in a row, if it's consecutive weekends for ongoing events, or if you're asking to waive any of those requirements, such as fee waivers, anything like that, that those would be things then that would come back to the board.
So I have a question as far as, so we have the 7th and the 14th of May, the 5th and the 12th. Are these the same entities, and would it be if the same entity is asking for consecutive weekends versus Blue Sage has one, Paradise has another, Creative Coalition has a third?
My thought was that if it was the same entity was asking for consecutive nights or weekends, then that would need to come to the board. Like these here, I can tell you specific, so we didn't give you which entities it was because we were really trying to keep it as a bigger conversation and not really drill down, but just to give you an idea. So May 7th, June 5th, June 12th, June 25th, July 9th, and July 31st is one entity. That's one group that's asked for all of those. Then you have another one that's only asked for one day, May 14th. And then you have another entity that's asked for 3 days, and one of those is also July 31st, so they overlap with each other. So it's those, when we start getting ones where it's an entity that's asking for, you look at that June, you've got June 5th, June 12th, then you have one free weekend, June 25th. That's the same the same group that's asking for those.
Yeah, Bill.
I assume that PP is Polish Park? Okay, so when they have their event, are they just expecting to utilize Polish Park? Are they expecting to utilize the sidewalk and the street or anything else?
They have to keep the sidewalk open for passer, but these are ones that have asked for the park and also street closures. So they're utilizing the park area and the street for part of their event. That is what feeds into just that opening discussion. I don't expect both of these to happen necessarily at the same time, but wanted to bring that back to the board as well, because several years ago there was a board decision, and we have an ordinance that states that typically commercial use is not permitted in Pullis Park. And so it's been permitted under COVID, but those additional allowances like the encroachment into town right of way for your liquor licenses and things like that to open up a larger area for businesses, those things are slowly going to go away. Right now, the encroachment approval is only through October, and that ends in October. So that I wanted to bring that back to the board, because what I'm seeing come out of this is people now we have commercial use, that they're wanting to use that park for a heavier commercial use presence. And I've had pros and cons brought up by different groups. Some of them say, well, the pros are that you can really sell your ticket and you're encapsulated. So people, the con was if you do it at Town Park, people can come and participate standing just outside the boundary, and they're not having to pay to come to your event, to be part of your event. So I see it from both sides, and so I wanted the board to think about that when we get beyond these additions that have been made for COVID, do we want to allow commercial use of Pullis Park? I've found looking at things, most places find that pocket parks are for passive use, not a consistent commercial use. I haven't done a deep dive into that, but I feel that it's more likely in a small contained area like Pullis Park than it is in a town park where you're able to spread out more. The maximum capacity at Pullis Park is 80 people. And so what we're seeing is that these events, they're putting their maximum capacity is that they're going to sell 80 tickets. That I think that when you confine people in a very small area, the impact is more substantial in that smaller area than it would be in a larger area.
Well, I think that should be one of your concerns. So maybe you guys could think about that. And secondly, the people that are turning it into a business, is it a business or is it a nonprofit, or do the lines blend together?
They absolutely blur, especially when you're dealing with any kind of a special event liquor license, because the only way that those are approved is if it's under the umbrella of a nonprofit. So you'll have a nonprofit entity operate as the umbrella to apply for that, but it's they're umbrellaing a for-profit venture.
So I've got a couple comments, and they may be for larger discussion, but the first is sort of a value comment, and this goes to the potential wear and tear on the park, which I understand could be considerable if we're having events one after another. At the same time, what is it that we value about our parks? Is it the landscaping, or is it that the landscaping encourages use, and what we really value is use by the community? So I feel like if it's the use, then we're focusing on sort of the wrong thing by prioritizing the landscaping itself. Something that we can, if we understand what the wear is like, then we can adjust our decisions based on that, but I don't feel like it should be, personally for me, that's not our top priority. It's making sure that the parks are available to the public and getting utilized. So kind of related to that, I personally do support commercial use of any of our parks. I think it's just another way to encourage park use in general. At the same time, it gives me pause a little bit to think of any one entity completely taking the capacity of the park and therefore making it unavailable for anyone else to use. I think if it's a public park, it's a public park. And in my mind, it needs to be available to the public anytime that it's open. So I understand some of the concerns of the event holders who are saying, well, we ticket these events, we need these to sustain our organization. At the same time, my personal preference would be that tickets are less than the park's full capacity so that it could still potentially be used by the public and we're not keeping the public out of a space. That's all.
I need time to reflect.
This is going to come up at the next board meeting. So we do have time to reflect. We do have time to, we don't have to make a decision tonight. Right, so, is there anything else you need input on? Wait, Bill?
Just one comment. We can always take a look at our fee schedule for multiple events in the same entity. You know, they're using it for their profit. Town should share.
Okay. My only last comment is, if maintaining the park would mean a much increased use of water, we need to look at the water and drought issues as well. Okay, anything else you need from the board, Corinne?
No, I was really hoping we'd have some community and get some feedback and thoughts from the businesses. Maybe they will be there for the meeting itself. what I'll probably do is we'll share the calendar with the businesses, especially the businesses. Luckily, all of these are later in the evening. Not one of these is, well, until we get a little bit later in the season. These first ones coming up don't start until 7 o'clock, and they're 7 to 10 o'clock. So as those are coming in, I will start approving them while we're having this conversation. Really, for me, what it was bringing it to the board and wanting the community members, the business owners to be aware that we were having this conversation because they requested this conversation, so that they can be part of it while it's happening. So all the entities that have come in, they know I'm not doing any administrative approvals that are 60 and 90 days out. I'm just kind of doing them in the schedule, in the upcoming month schedule, so that we can, as we move through the conversation, nobody feels like they weren't heard, or if any decisions are made that could potentially change it, that they're not being approved and then modified after the fact. So
I did speak briefly with Laura Chittenden of Indigo Autumn, and she expressed concern about the ones that start later. She doesn't have a problem with anything that starts at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the evening. She's fine with that. It's not impacting her business. The only thing that she would request is that, especially for the ones that start at 3, if they're going to add a farmer's market, she requested that, maybe they should move it down to the 100 block versus the 200 block because having a farmer's market out in front of her shop really is not conducive for her business. Oh, this is different. This is another farmer's market has been proposed. Yeah, Michelle.
One comment, and this would not be a board decision, but for the organizations to consider would be maybe the group that's putting on the farmer's market would give her a free booth immediately in front of her shop, and then she would, that would be her space to use as she chooses, no matter what else is happening in the other spaces around her. Or have an open door or a sign or however she would want to use the space, but it would be reserved specifically, to make it clear that her business is.
So I would say that as well, that for me it's the balance, and so when I have those conversations, the same. I think it's similar to the conversation we're having when we're talking about allowing food trucks on Grand Avenue. That while we of course can't rise to the level to micromanage how they set up their booths, we are trying to put things into place that encourage people to be respectful of the brick and mortar business. We wouldn't want a food truck to set up in the parking spaces right in front of the restaurant doors, things like that. And so I think it would be a similar ask or compromise, for people that are utilizing Grand Avenue as well, to be cognizant of where you're placing your people in relation to the businesses, the other businesses that are open during those hours.
Okay. We okay on this one? Okay. So let's move on to, let's review the goals that we did at the last retreat, see if we're on track.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
could I make a suggestion that we, as individual council members, go around and say which one of these goals is your personal highest priority,
Okay.
and just see where we're all at?
Okay. I think that's a great idea. Why don't we start with you, Dave? Okay. All right, Michelle?
My top goal is the master plan, because I feel like it should drive decisions on every other goal.
Okay. Karen? Okay. Mick?
Mine is number 3. With drought conditions and water is everything to us. That would be my goal, number 3.
Okay. Bill?
To provide services, water, sewer, trash, and police, and streets. The rest of it, we could always live without it. This community, we need those.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Tammy?
I'm going to say number 3 too, followed very closely by number 1, because we've got to get that master plan done.
Okay. And then I would vote for number 1 first and then number 3 second. So just reverse the order. Okay. So does anyone think that we need to revise our goals at all? Has stuff come up that would make you think that we should expand them or change them in any way? Dave?
I'm thinking that what we just talked about would change the order of how these goals read. I don't think we need to do a deep dive right now into the specifics of the goals, but what I'm hearing is goal 1 and 3 are tied for first place. So there'd be 2 goal number 1s, and then everything else can kind of fall out after that.
Okay.
Like Karen had mentioned the money next, so then that one would come in. And then the other goals would fall behind that, but I think that helps staff and us to look at what are our top ones and put them in the right order.
Okay. That sounds like a great idea. All right, Amanda, I'm sure you can provide that for us. Thank you.
Yeah, 3.
Okay. Well, we already had them, which is really beneficial. Okay. Well, is there anything else anyone would like to? Yes, Michelle.
Just a cleanup on the goals. If we're doing some minor editing, there are a couple of lines in there that say if it passes in November. So I think we could say that it did pass in November, and we could go ahead and remove that. Yeah.
And if Amanda, if you would just send me the numbers and the orders, and then I'll change the document itself. Okay. Anything else? All right. Then I am calling this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.